today we're going to play around with some different pie crusts I've been wanting to try. Now my first one I love to make because it's just so easy and it's no fail. It's just flour, cold water, some Crisco vegetable oil, shortening, and butter. Everything's good with butter, and a little salt. My second one I'm going to try, it calls for white distilled vinegar. I've never made a pie crust with vinegar, but I just want to try it to see how it tastes and how the flakiness turns out. And then my mother, whenever she made an apple pie, she would always love to eat it with cheese. So I found a simple pie crust, kind of follows along with my basic pie crust, but you add cheese into it. And so I thought I would make it because I know my mother always thought apple pie and cheese go together good. So that'll be our third pie crust we'll make today. So we're going to begin now with our first no-fail pie crust. So I already have 1 cup of flour in here, and I'm using gold medal. I like gold medal, and I try to always use gold medal if I can find it. But during this time with the COVID and everything, it's been hard to find. So you can use other kinds, but it seems like the gluten is harder to fight than with gold medal. It seems like I don't have to worry so much about getting that gluten effect. Also, King Arthur is a really good flour. But I'm just using all-purpose white flour. So I'm going to measure out another cup because the recipe calls for 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And what I do is I dig down deep, get a nice heaping cup, and kind of just shake it down and rake off evenly with the butter knife, the back side of the butter knife. Because you want to measure out pretty accurate with this. Then I have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Put that in there. Kind of mix it up just a little bit. You don't have to, but I do. And one thing easy about these pie crust recipes is you don't have to stir them and mix them by hand. I just use my Crusts food processor, and I love it. I have a large one. And I just dump the flour in there. Don't use your sharp blade for cutting. Use your pastry knife. It's usually plastic. Okay, and now we're going to get the butter and the shortening and the water out of the refrigerator. Okay, now we got our cold, unsalted butter. And we're going to kind of break it up and drop it into the food processor with the flour and the salt. We want it nice and cold and firm. And that's about 1.5 sticks is 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And then you want 3 tablespoons of Crisco. I like Crisco shortening. And that came out of the refrigerator too. And this is ice water. Okay. Now we're ready to pulse. And we want it to get to a crumbly stage. Has to be plugged in. Not quite there. starting to get there. It's on the sides it's still loose. Getting there. It's almost there. Maybe a few more pulses. And it'll look like cornmeal. Now you can see it beating up on the sides now. I think this next time it'll be finished. But you can see it breaking up and looking really coarse. That's why the shortening in the butter has to be so cold. Okay, we're ready for the water part. Okay, you can see how it's got all these little balls. And that means it's coarse. That's how you want it to look. You don't want it to be a dough yet. Okay, now I'm going to pour the water in. Just a little bit at a time. And now we want it to form a ball. Okay, it's coming together, but it's still not a ball. Add some more cold water. Now it's almost one piece. Maybe just a tad more water. Now you can kind of see how it's together. And so we're going to spread it out and kind of roll it into a ball now. It's no more little balls. So we're going to put a little bit of flour down here on the little placemat. I got this at a kitchen supply called Mobile Fixture. It's just a piece of hard plastic that you can roll cookie doughs or pie crust out on. We're just going to make a ball. Isn't that pretty? And that's why I call it a no-fail pie crust. It's just simple as pie. And I'm going to take a little spray and spray my plastic wrap so it doesn't stick to the plastic. Put it in a ball and stick it in the refrigerator for an hour or overnight. Now we're ready for our second pie crust, and it's made with distilled white vinegar. We got 2½ cups of flour, and I'm going to put a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and I prefer mixing it with a whisk just to make sure the salt and sugar gets distributed evenly. I'll just do that a couple of times. And this is my pastry blade I was telling you about. See, it's plastic. I'm going to stick it back in my food processor. And I'm pouring my flour in here. Okay. Now I'm ready for my butter. So now we got our cold unsalted butter out of the refrigerator. It's a stick and a half or 12 tablespoons. And then we got a fourth a cup or 4 tablespoons of Crisco. Shortening. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pulse it a few times till it looks like cornmeal. Okay. All right. We'll do this again. Working with 2.5 cups of flour, so it may take a few more pulses. Knock it off the sides a little bit so I get down there with the butter and the shortening and ball up. It's almost there. I love my food processor. Everybody needs one of these in there. And I like Crusts because the motor lasts a lot longer. Because sometimes you have to blend up some heavy duty stuff like hard carrots and things like that. But this brand holds up real well. Almost there. It's so cool the way it beads up. I like to watch it. Maybe one more time. Okay. You see how it's made all those little beads and everything. That kind of looks like cornmeal. It's not smooth anymore. So now we're ready to get our water and our white vinegar and make a ball out of it. Okay, so we got our tablespoon and our white distilled vinegar. And we're going to pour this in. And I got about 1/2 cup of water, but we may not use all the water. We just put a little bit of water at a time and turn it on till we get a smooth texture. You just have to check it every time. You can smell the vinegar in it. almost there. A little more water. I'm just going to put a little bit more water. Alright, that looks good. Nice and smooth. So I'm going to get my plastic wrap. Spray it. And I still got a little bit of flour on here from before. I'm going to drop my dough into here. And form a ball. You definitely can smell the vinegar in there. Okay. And we're going to put that in the refrigerator. Next, we're going to make our cheese crust. So now we're going to make our cheddar pie crust. And I got my 2½ cups of flour in here, a teaspoon of sugar, and only a ½ teaspoon of salt. And I use sea salt. And I'm going to just whisk it around. This is a habit I got. I just like to whisk it and make sure it gets distributed in the flour evenly. And then I pour it into my food processor. Whoops. I guess it would be nice if I put my blade in. I'll pour it into my food processor. And we're going to add, I think it's 14 tablespoons of butter. This one doesn't call for shortening, but I think it's 14. Let's see, it's a stick and 3/4 of a stick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11. Yep, 14. And this again is unsalted butter. I'm just going to drop it in there in pieces. It's nice and cold and firm. If it's room temperature butter, it'll never make those coarse flour or those pea-shaped balls in the flour. You'll never get it with cold butter. So, I mean with hot butter. So you want your butter to be cold, cold, cold. Now I'm going to pulse it. I just love having a food processor for this part. I could never do it any other way, I think. Not as easy anyway. They only say 8 to 12 times, but it always takes me longer. It's getting there. I'm going to rake the sides down just a little bit. This one, before you add the water to make your smooth round ball, we have to add the cheddar cheese in. Oh, wow, that looks good. Maybe one more time. That's pretty. This is with a lot of butter. Course meal look. I might do it one more time. And then we're going to add the cheddar. I'm going to add the cheddar. That was about a cup and a half. You can use white cheddar or you can use yellow cheddar. That looks good. My mother would be proud of this with the cheese in it. Seems like the cheese acts like butter and kind of helps it make that coarse look. But maybe it replaces the shortening look. Okay, so now I'm going to add more water. So half a cup of water. And you see the cheese is pretty much mixed up really good. I'm going to add a little bit of water at a time. Yep, doing good. I won't use the whole half a cup of water, but you can just see how it's making a nice come together ball. Need a little more water. You gotta make sure that water's cold. That's why I got it out of my refrigerator. There it goes. Making that ball. I may add just a little bit more water. That's pretty. Okay, let's sprinkle a little bit more flour there. Turn out my flour ball. Now this one feels heavier with the cheese, so. But it looks good. You can see the cheese in it. Now if you used all white cheese, you wouldn't see the cheese at all, but I like the yellow look. I love cheese. All right, we're gonna put it over here on our plastic wrap.